Well, you'll be happy to hear that this morning we'll be completing part 10 of the 10-part series on Dhruva Maharaj. We completed chapter 11, which summarized statement is Dhruva heard very elevated and consoling teachings from his grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu. And Swayambhuva Manu covered many points. Dhruva had some lingering feelings about the death of his brother and the killing of his brother by a yaksha, but he yielded and accepted the position of trying to please Vishnu once again instead of venting his anger. And he was told by Swayambhuva Manu that you've made offense to Kuvera, who is a great devotee of Lord Shiva. So you should very quickly go to Kuvera and fall at his feet and beg his forgiveness for this offense. And because that's a Vaishnava procedure. If one is offended, this is pretty extreme, but if one is offended, you go to the person who's been offended. Of course, the rest of the Yaksha community have been offended, but they're represented by their master, Kuvera. They're servants of Kuvera, and Kuvera is a servant of Lord Shiva, so they're also devotees of Lord Shiva. So now, that's where we ended chapter 11. And now beginning chapter 12, this has a title, Journey Home. So there's some sections that go like this. How Dhruva received benedictions from Kuvera. He returned to his own city, the capital. He worshipped the Lord through sacrifices, which it was described by Swayambhuva Manu. He renounced everything at a mature stage. He attained the abode of the Lord in the same body. So that's the elements of this chapter 12. Its chapter opens, first verse, Kuvera pacified and blesses Dhruva. Now it's Dhruva who's offended Kuvera, but Kuvera is going to express his satisfaction with Dhruva. The scene, one more time, it's Maitreya speaking to Vidura. Maitreya, the sage, on the right. Vidura looks pretty young in this painting, but actually he's quite old. My dear Vidura, Dhruva Maharaj's anger subsided, and he completely ceased killing yakshas. When Kuvera, the most blessed master of the treasury, learned this news, he appeared before Dhruva. Dhruva didn't have to go to him. Kuvera came to Dhruva. While being worshipped by yakshas, kinnaras, and charanas, he spoke to Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands. Now we often hear about the yakshas being worshippers of Kuvera, who is a worshipper of Shiva, but here we're hearing the kinnaras and the charanas. They're also very respectful worshippers of Kuvera. Second verse. The master of the treasury, Kuvera, said, O sinless son of a Kshatriya, very gracious of him because Swayambhuva Manu already said that he was sinful. Now he's blessing him by saying he's sinless. I am very glad to know that under the instruction of your grandfather, you have given up your enmity. Although it is very difficult to avoid, I'm very pleased with you. Now he gave it up on the force or the power or the purity of the instructions of Swayambhuva Manu. So sometimes people ask, how to? So here's a how to answer. You associate with elevated persons, hear what they say, and follow what they say. And that's a how to procedure. Giving up any negative feelings can happen simply by a superior's instruction. Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita. He makes reference to Bhagavad Gita. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. There, the effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma or Super Soul. Now, automatically doesn't mean mechanically. Automatically means that's a byproduct of something. That's the effect of something. The
No, audio is okay. It is blinking, so I think it's something got loose or it just now started. It was okay.
Okay, let's see if something gets better.
It is not. Okay, let's see.
Carry on, right? Well, technology has its ups and downs. So I'll read it again. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. Now, some minds, they're mad, and there's no superior dictation that they follow. They just move, unguided. But in normal circumstances, there's some dictation the mind receives, and it follows. The effect of controlling the mind is that one automatically follows the dictation of Paramatma or Super Soul. That is, if one is engaged in the mind in the yoga process and has become a little proficient in the yoga process. That's what happened with Dhruva. Here's a summary of several verses. Kuvera addresses Dhruva. O sinless Naga. To reassure Dhruva, it's like a benediction. He further says that time is the cause for everyone's destruction. We heard about this from Swayambhuva Manu. Time brings things into being. Times destroy things. So the cause for everyone's destruction is time. Bodily conception is like a dream. It's a product of ignorance and misconceived intelligence. Therefore, give it up. Now, not give up the body, but it's like a Bhagavad Gita class. Give up the bodily conception. So it's an important teaching. Therefore, it's being repeated. From thinking of the body, this is verse number 4. From thinking only of the body, atad dhyanad. Atad dhyanad. From this arises samsara. And the opposite of the jiva's knowledge and bliss, ignorance and suffering. Continuing, verse 5 and 6. Tad gacha dhruva bhadram te. There's the Sanskrit of these verses. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the bhajasva word. Bhajasva, worship the Lord who is, this is what the verses are saying, beyond sense perception. How do you worship that which is beyond the sense perception? You have to have faith in the sound vibration or the teachings that reveal that which is beyond sense perception. Adhoksaja is beyond sense perception. The Lord is the super soul of all living entities, or within the thought of all beings are like oneself. Sarva bhutatma bhavena. He is transcendental in form. He is the energetic behind his external energy. He is aloof from his external energy. The Lord who delivers from materialistic existence. Bhava chidam. Bhava is very different than the word bhava. Bhava is the misery of material existence. Bhava chidam. He breaks or delivers one from that material existence. The Lord whose lotus feet are worshipful. Kuvera requests Dhruva to ask for a benediction and is asking me to read. So, do you happen to have your Bhagavatam? Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 7. There we go. Fantastic. Text 7. My dear Dhruva, son of Maharaj Uttanapada, we have heard that you are constantly engaged in transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known for his lotus navel. You are therefore worthy to take all benedictions from us. Please, therefore, ask without hesitation whatever benediction you want from me. Now, this is very gracious because he's just been on a campaign of killing his followers. But he's blessed him by considering him Bhadram Te, you are sinless. He's requesting him to worship the Supreme Lord. Now he's asking Dhruva to take any benediction. Dhruva Maharaj, that most elevated, pure devotee, who was an intelligent and thoughtful king, begged that he might have unflinching faith in and remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for thus a person can cross over the ocean of nescience very easily. It's not easy, but it's easy by that method. Offering respect to everyone and seeking their prayers and blessings softens our heart and helps in unbroken remembrance of Krishna. Now this is very similar to what Swayambhuva Manu said. These are characteristics of a devotee, and the devotees, not only their heart is soft, but they're seeking unbroken remembrance of Krishna by offering respect to everyone and seeking their prayers and blessings. So Dhruva essentially is praying to Kuvera for bhakti. Kuvera was very pleased, and happily he gave Dhruva Maharaj the benediction he wanted. Now he's a demigod, so normally demigods are approached for something on the material side, but demigods, they're also bhaktas, so they're capable of bestowing bhakti, and he, of course, Dhruva already has, but that's the benediction that he's asking. And Kuvera then disappeared from Dhruva's presence, and Dhruva returned back to his capital city. Here's some images from museums that are carvings of Kuvera. This one's in brass, the other one's in stone. On the right side, interesting, the Chinese Buddhists also have some acknowledgement of Kuvera. Now, that's a branch of Buddhism that's not necessarily very prevalent and popular, but they have some record or some acknowledgement of Kuvera. So he goes back to his kingdom, and he begins ruling in his kingdom, resumes ruling in his kingdom, and he moves towards renunciation after some time. Here's the summary of these 4 verses, starting with verse number 10. Dhruva offered great sacrifices, profuse charities, and offered everything to the Supreme Lord. That was in verse 10. In verse 11, he saw the Lord in all beings and everything in the Lord, in him. Now there's an asterisk, so we're going to spend some time with number 11. 12, endowed with godly qualities, respectful to brahmanas, kind to the poor, protector of all religious principles, considered as a father by the citizens. And then 13, desiring to decrease his pious results by enjoyment and destroy his sinful reactions by austerity, he ruled the earth for 36,000 years, which was proclaimed by Vishnu before his ruling began. So here's a detail from text number 11. He saw the Lord in all beings and everything in him. So commentary, by power of his mature meditation, he saw the Lord within his heart and externally in all beings. And relation to text 13, his desire to destroy reactions was exhibited out of humility. He had piety, but he didn't want to appear to be the enjoyer of the fruits of his piety, all these sacrifices that he performed. Actually, he did not have any pious or sinful reactions since he had developed prema. Now that's a teaching that's worthy of being clear about. Both the fruits of piety as well as impiety are not part of the life of pure devotees. There may be some whatever it is that comes in the life of the devotee, it's a connection with Krishna. It's not on the material side, not on the karmic or modes of nature side. Passing away many years, suitable for enjoyment of artha, dharma, and kama, with undisturbed senses, the great devotee Dhruva, realizing this universe was made by Maya, is like a Gandharva city, manufactured in a dream, caused by ignorance in oneself, handed over his throne to his son. Now, if he had that realization, why would he hand it over to his son? Because his son didn't have that realization yet, just like Lord Vishnu gave him the kingdom. Considering that all things were affected by time, he left for Badrikashram. So it says to read 14 through 16. Here's 14 and 15. Since it is made of Maya, this is commentary, the universe is real. However, by ignorance within the self, it appears unreal, and thus is compared to a Gandharva city in a dream made by ignorance. Let me read the actual translation of text 14 and 15. The self-controlled great sun Dhruva Maharaj thus passed many, many years favorably executing 3 kinds of worldly activities, dharma, artha, and kama. Thereafter, he handed over the charge of the royal throne to his son to take that service himself. Srila Dhruva Maharaj realized that this cosmic manifestation bewilders living entities like a dream or phantasmagoria, because it is a creation of the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord. So he is on a very high level of realization. In Badrikashram, Dhruva Maharaj senses became completely purified because he bathed regularly in the crystal clear purified water. He fixed his sitting position and by yogic practice controlled the breathing process and the air of life, same as he had done when he was 5 years old. In this way, his senses were completely withdrawn, pratyahara. He then concentrated his mind, dhyana, on the archa vigraha form of the Lord, which is the exact replica of the Lord, and thus, meditating upon him, entered into complete trance. So step by step, he's repeating. He attained, again, samadhi. And he experienced ecstatic symptoms in that state. Because of his transcendental bliss, incessant tears flowed from his eyes. His heart melted, and there was shivering and standing of hairs all over his body. Thus, transformed in a trance of devotional service, Dhruva Maharaj completely forgot his bodily existence, and thus he immediately became liberated from material bondage. Second time around, he's a very accomplished person. Commentary: Mukta means liberated, and linga means the subtle body. When a man dies, he quits the gross body, but the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego carries him to a new body. When one becomes liberated even from the subtle body, at that time the living entity is competent and fully prepared to be transferred to the transcendental or spiritual world. That's Prabhupada's writing from the purport. Now, same understanding. This is a particular process for Satya Yuga. And Kapila Dev also appears in Satya Yuga. Kapila Dev's mother is Dhruva Maharaj's father's sister. Dhruva Maharaj's mother is Devahuti, and Dhruva Maharaj's father is Uttanapada, and their brother and sister. It's Satya Yuga, so the process is dhyan, but dhyan in its perfectional stage leads to bhakti, not just meditation. Devotion to the personality of Godhead. Here's in Padma Purana, in relation to Dhruva, mukti does not mean sayuja liberation, but dasya, according to the context of the previous verses. The wise say that liberation means following Vishnu. So, specifically, in Padma Purana, we are understanding he is engaged in the mode of service. His attaining mukti is not the merging kind, or the sayuja kind. Vishnur anucharatvam he moksham ahur manishina. That was liberation that Dhruva attained, following Vishnu. Dhruva saw the foremost airplane, this is a Vaikuntha airplane, descended from the sky, illuminating all directions like the rising moon. In that airplane, he then saw two persons, the best of the Devatas, means they're Vishnu Dutas, dark in complexion, youthful with forearms, and reddish lotus eyes, with fine clothing, crowns, necklaces, bracelets, and beautiful earrings, holding clubs. Just in case. Dhruva Maharaj, seeing that these uncommon personalities were direct servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, immediately stood up. But being puzzled, in hastiness, he forgot how to receive them in the proper way. Therefore, he simply offered obeisances with folded hands and chanted and glorified the holy names of the Lord. So guess what Prabhupada's comment is? When in doubt, chant the holy names of the Lord. Even though one does not know how to please Lord Vishnu or his associates, simply by sincerely chanting the holy name of the Lord, everything becomes perfect. And from verse 22, as Nanda and Sunanda, those are the two Vishnu Dutas, approached him, Dhruva's mind was completely absorbed in Krishna. The phrase Tam Krishna Padam Binivishta Chetasam. Absorbed in Krishna's lotus feet. So here's the Vaikuntha realm, where the Lord is being worshipped by the goddess Lakshmi and so many nice devotees. In Vaikuntha world, all the living entities are in oneness with the Supreme Godhead because they never defy his orders. Here in the material world, however, they are not samata agreeable. Samata. This is an important lesson from Dhruva's life. This is the state of consciousness that he attained. It was very intense, but it's Satya Yuga, and he had the qualification to get to the stage of samatha. One becomes a surrendered soul and agrees to the order of the Supreme Lord, can easily overcome the stringent laws of nature. The example of Dhruva Maharaj is very fitting. Simply by becoming agreeable to the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by developing love of Godhead, Dhruva got the chance. What is impossible for Dhruva Maharaj is possible for everyone. Very encouraging. I mean, Dhruva Maharaj was on such an elevated platform, but the principle is quite simple. Agreeing to the orders of the Supreme Lord. In the next verse, Prabhupada writes the same thing. What was possible for Dhruva Maharaj is possible for anyone. So now he's going to make his journey back to Godhead. Nanda and Sunanda, the two confidential associates of Lord Vishnu, said, "Dear King, Bhadram Te, let there be all good fortune unto you. When you're only 5 years old, you underwent severe austerities. You thereby greatly satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world." Fantastic. Here's commentary from the next verse. To achieve Vishnu Loka is very difficult, but by your austerity you have conquered. Even the great rishis and demigods cannot achieve this position. Simply to see the supreme abode, the Vishnu planet, the sun and the moon and all other planets, stars, lunar mansions and solar systems are circumambulating it. Now please come. We are welcome. You are welcome to go there. We saw this image on the right side. There it is again. Where is the abode of Dhruva? It's just below those Muni Loka planets, and it's above the heavenly and Bhuvar Loka planets. And they're circumambulating, as it says, the sun, moon, all other planets, stars, lunar mansions. Lunar mansions means the nakshatras through which the moon passes in its phases of 15 days or 28 days. Lunar mansions and solar systems. You've attained the planet of Vishnu, difficult to achieve. Vishwanath Chakravarti makes this translation. Which the Devatas see but cannot attain. Stay there. The moon, sun, and other planets, the constellations and stars circumambulate that supreme planet clockwise. We discussed that before. Twice. There's Prabhupada. No, not Prabhupada. There's a passenger riding in a train. From Prabhupada's purport. While the scientist and philosopher go to the moon, but are disappointed in their attempts to stay there and live, the devotee makes an easy journey to other planets and ultimately goes back to Godhead. Devotees have no interest in seeing other planets, but while going back to Godhead, they see all of them as passing phases, just as one who's going to a distant place passes through many small stations. Now, what Prabhupada is writing here is described in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar, after many experiences of visiting higher planets, he returns back to Braja. He does his cowherding activities for some time, but a strong desire comes to go to Vaikuntha. So Vimana descends, and zoom, off he goes. And as he's traveling through the cosmic manifestation, he passes all those places. The demigods see him passing, they wave and they cheer. Yay, he's going to Vaikuntha. And he has no attraction because he's been there, and he's not like, it's just passing. Like this very nice expression. Like one who is going to a distant place passes through many small stations. So there's the Vaikuntha Vimana. There's Nanda and Sunanda. One of them is blowing his conch. O Dhruva, stay in that supreme abode of Vishnu, a place not achieved by your forefathers or any others, which is worshipped by the whole universe. Oh, immortal, you're qualified to board this excellent plane sent by the best of famous persons. That's Vishnu. Here's what the Nanda and Sunanda say. Again, this is Vishwanath's paraphrase. Dear King Dhruva, neither your forefathers nor anyone else before you ever achieved such a transcendental planet, the planet known as Vishnu Loka, where Vishnu personally resides, is the highest of all. It is worshipable by the inhabitants of all other planets within the universe. Please come with us and live there eternally. Whew. Very special. The planet attained by Dhruva Maharaj is an eternal Vaikuntha planet, confirmed by the following statement in Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Here we go. Situated 8,800,000 miles above Saturn, or 20,800,000 miles above the Earth, are the 7 saintly sages, who are always thinking of the well-being of the inhabitants of the universe. They circumambulate the supreme abode of Lord Vishnu, known as Dhruva Loka, the pole star. Now that's Canto 5, Chapter 22. Here's a similar reference in Chapter 23, first verse. Shukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, 1,000,000 300,000 yojanas, or 10,400,000 miles above the planets of the seven sages, is the place that learned scholars describe as the abode of Lord Vishnu. The son of Maharaj Uttanapad, the great devotee Maharaj Dhruva, still resides as the life source of all the living entities who live until the end of the creation. Agni, Indra, Prajapati, Kashyapa, and Dharma all assemble there to offer him honor and respectful obeisances. They circumambulate him with their right sides towards him. These are some of the Saptarishi realms. I have already described the glorious activities of Maharaj Dhruva, 4th canto. These quotations from Srimad Bhagavatam show that the Dhruva Loka planet is an eternal Vaikuntha planet, even though it is apparently situated within the jurisdiction of the material world. The situation of a liberated soul who lives within the material world is similar as described in Vedanta Sutra 4.4.19. Quote, although situated within a material body which goes through the 6 material transformations, a liberated soul is actually situated on the transcendental platform. He has nothing to do with the changing material world. At the time of annihilation of this material universe, when all the material planets perish, Dhruva Loka planet is not destroyed, but merely becomes no longer visible to the eyes of the conditioned soul. In Laghu Bhagavatamrita, we find this reference. Dhruva Loka has this form of Vishnu presiding there, the abode of Ajita. No explanation other than that's the reference Rupa Goswami makes in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, the form of the Lord in Dhruva Loka. During the time of Trivikram avatar, the Lord grew up and his feet reached the Satya Loka of Brahmadev. This is a verse from Kuresh. Kuresh is a follower of Ramanujacharya, so this is his glorification. Ganga flowed in 7 streams from there. One came down in response to the penance of Bhagirath to Bhu Mandala. In between, it crossed the Milky Way and reached Dhruva Mandala. The next stop was Chandra Mandala as nectarine flow, and thereafter it reached Surya Mandala to reduce the intensity of the heat of Surya. From Surya Mandala, Ganga flowed on the Meru mountain, and a small stream from there landed on Lord Shiva's matted locks and purified him. So the reason for making reference to this is it's giving a nice poetic summary of the structure of the universe, whereas Dhruva Loka and its connection with the descent of the Ganges. So when Vamana or Trivikram avatar became very large and poked his toe through the covering of the universe, the Ganga flowed in 7 streams from Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. From Brahmaloka, it came down as a result of the austerities of Bhagirath, and in between it fell across the Milky Way and reached Dhruva Mandala. Now, that reference to the how does Kuresh view, how does an elevated Vaishnava view the Milky Way? No explanation. So I don't know. but reference is made. I don't know the Sanskrit either. When he heard the sweet speeches of the Lord's chief associates in the Vaikuntha planets, he immediately took his sacred bath, dressed himself with suitable ornaments, and performed his daily spiritual duties. All this before he got on the plane. Thereafter, he offered his respectful obeisances to the great sages present there and accepted their blessings. Before getting on board, Dhruva Maharaj worshipped the airplane. He circumambulated it and offered obeisances to the associates of Vishnu. In the meantime, he became as brilliant and illuminating as molten gold. He was thus completely prepared to board the transcendental plane. Pretty exciting. Since Dhruva was living at that time in Badrik Ashram, there were other great sages there. As a humble Vaishnav, he accepted blessings from all the sages before riding on the plane brought by the chief of the Vaikuntha associates. This is a photograph of that celebrated temple that many people go to visit when they go to Badrinath. And depending upon the season, it can be really crowded. This looks like not like the super crowded season, but still there's long lines to get in. Here is from the Sanskrit of the verse. Bibrad rupam hiranmayam. Before getting aboard, Dhruva Maharaj worshipped the airplane, circumambulated it, and offered obeisances to the associates of Vishnu. In the meantime, he became as brilliant, bibrad, and illuminating as molten gold, hiran mayam. He was thus completely prepared to board the transcendental plane. And Sridhar Swami's commentary on this verse, hiranmayam means full of effulgence. And the BBT translators have put that means his body changed to spiritual existence. Hiranmayam. Dhruva Maharaj obtained a new body made of spiritual energy. Now we heard that he ascended in the self-same body, but what that means is that his body became fully spiritualized. I'm pausing because there was some discussion during the Festival of the Holy Name. There was the first class was a nice verse, a letter, Patravali, a collection of letters from Bhaktisiddhanta to disciples in handwritten form, that he was appreciating their attraction to the Holy Name. And in that, he was saying through the chanting of the Holy Name with intensity and care, the distinction between the body and mind and the distinction between them and the soul becomes effaced. So it's a point of doubt or concern or confusion. Here's one such explanation. The body and the mind of one who becomes absorbed, like Dhruva became absorbed, becomes spiritualized. Or his body changed to spiritual existence. Or one's senses, like one's ear and one's tongue, become fully spiritualized. They no longer act as a material ear or material tongue. Although from the conditioned state, that's how they act. Commentary says, sometimes the material body itself becomes a spiritual body by the inconceivable Shakti of the Lord, as in the case of Dhruva. That is, he had a glowing body. By the intervention of the Supreme Lord's inconceivable potency, the devotee leaves behind his material body and attains a spiritual body like that of the Lord. This appears very early in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Narada, in chapter 6 of Canto 1. Narada describes to his disciple Vyas who he was in his previous life and how he attained the form of Narada. But it was a similar method by the process of meditation and chanting a mantra, very similar to what Dhruva did. He achieved spiritual perfection, and at the time he left his body, the body was left behind, but instantly he assumed, or he manifests this form of Narada. So again, by the intervention of the Supreme Lord's inconceivable potency, the devotee leaves behind his material body and attains a spiritual body like that of the Lord. So that's what Dhruva is doing. Here's a nice painting. When Dhruva Maharaj was attempting to get on the transcendental plane, he saw death personified approach him. Not caring for death, however, he took advantage of the opportunity to put his feet on the head of death. In other words, giving benediction to death. And thus, he got up on the airplane, which was as big as a house. The big airplane. Commentary, Prabhupada's purport. Dhruva Maharaj suddenly saw death personified before him, but he was not afraid. There's a cat with a mouse in her jaw, and there's a cat with her kitten in her jaw. So death is not a point of fear for a devotee any more than a little kitten sees the jaws of the mother cat as fearful. The mouse sees the jaws of the cat as fearful. But the devotee doesn't see death as something fearful. Dhruva Maharaj was not afraid. Death personified came before him, and he was not afraid. So the Gandharvas and demigods shower flowers from the sky. They sounded musical instruments. It's a grand celebration. But look, there's Dhruva looking over his right shoulder, seeing another Vimana. That's his mother's Vimana. So here's what happened. Dhruva was seated on the transcendental airplane, which was just about to start, when he remembered his poor mother, Suniti. He thought to himself, how shall I go alone to the Vaikuntha planet and leave behind my poor mother? They didn't say it, but the great associates of Vaikuntha, Nanda and Sunanda, could understand the mind of Dhruva, and thus they showed him that his mother, Suniti, was going forward in another plane. And commentary says, when Dhruva Maharaj was passing through space, he gradually saw all the planets of the solar system. And on the path he saw all the demigods in their airplanes showering flowers upon him like rain. Similar to what we hear in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Gopakumar's travels like this. This incident proves that a pure devotee like Dhruva Maharaj can fulfill all his desires, semicolon. By the grace of the Lord, he becomes exactly like the Lord, and thus, whenever he thinks of anything, his wish is immediately fulfilled by the grace of the Lord, because he doesn't have separate interest. So desire doesn't stop, but it's connected to the Lord. Dhruva Maharaj passed through all planets and arrived at Dhruva Loka. Now we've seen this illustration 2 other times. Here it is again. Dhruva Maharaj passed through all the planets and arrived at Dhruvaloka. We're ending the chapter almost. Now, notice, we pointed out twice before here, just again, in the middle of this drawing is a dolphin upside down with his tail up and the head of the dolphin down, and this is called the Shishumar. Shishumar. It's described as an object of meditation for yogis that want to travel to higher planetary regions. So they meditate on the position of the higher planetary systems by meditating on the Shishumar, or dolphin. Now, dolphin is the word that Prabhupada translated. So I was asking the head of the Temple of Vedic Planetarium, his name is Antardweep, what is this Shishumar anyways? I've read this, I want to verify with you. So he confirmed. It's an object, an imaginary object that yogis meditate upon for the purpose of ascending to that higher planetary region. And he said, in his personal opinion, the description, although Prabhupada is translated as dolphin, to him it more resembles the carrier of Varuna. That's this very interesting looking crossbreed between a reptile and some other kind of creature. That's his opinion in any case. Where's Dhruva situated? It's above the sun and the Saptarishis, but below Maharloka. Now, we covered this several times, and if someone's interested in details, you'll find it in the 5th canto, Cosmology section of the Bhagavatam, chapter 23, text 9, for details on where Dhruvaloka is situated. But it's within the universe, above the sun and the Saptarishis, and below Maharloka. Here's a drawing of the Saptarishis. That's the Big Dipper. And that kratu, that cup of the Big Dipper, points to where Dhruvaloka is. Here's another drawing showing the lower 7 planetary systems, the middle Bhumandala with the central island Jambudweep pictured in the middle, and then on top of Jambudweep is Mount Meru, and atop of Mount Meru there's the other planets, including, as you see on the left and the right, the sun and the moon and Saturn and others. And then upper realms, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka. It's just an artist's rendering of cosmology. Here's a closer picture of what's at the top section, to give us some idea of where Dhruvaloka is. Okay. From verse 36, how can one go to Vaikuntha Loka? Text 36, in case you want to go to Vaikuntha Loka. The self-effulgent Vaikuntha planets, by whose illumination alone all the illuminating planets within the material world give off reflected light, cannot be reached by those who are not merciful to other living entities. Only persons who constantly engage in the welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuntha planets. Bhadrani charanti, engage in the ultimate welfare of all living entities. Ultimate welfare, not just material philanthropy. Prabhupada writes, a Krishna conscious being is always engaged in planning how to take all the suffering humanity back home, back to Godhead, even if one is not successful in reclaiming all the fallen souls back to Godhead. Still, because he is Krishna conscious, his path to Vaikuntha Loka is open. It's encouraging, isn't it? So going on, Krishna Parayana. Krishna Parayana. That's a qualification. That this phrase, Krishna Parayana, Vasudeva Parayana, Narayana Parayana, we find it in several places in the Bhagavatam. 6th canto is a place that it's there 4 times. It's important. It's, being completely absorbed in the personality of Godhead, fully Krishna conscious. Here's text 37. Persons who are peaceful, equipoised, cleansed and purified, and who know the art of pleasing all other living entities, keep friendship only with the devotees of the Lord. They alone can very easily achieve the perfection of going back home, back to Godhead. Shanta, Samadrisha, Shuddha, Sarva, Bhutanu, Ranjana, and so forth. Achyutapriya Bandhava. Here's 38 and 39. More about attaining Vaikuntha. In this way, the fully Krishna conscious Dhruva Maharaj, the exalted son of Maharaj Uttanapada, attained the summit of the 3 statuses of the planetary systems. Maitreya said, my dear Vidura, descendant of Kuru, as a herd of bulls circumambulates a central pole on their right side, all the luminaries within the universal sky unceasingly circumambulate the abode of Dhruva Maharaj with great force and speed. Okay. What took Dhruva from where he was to Dhruva Loka? That's, the whole topic. From Sakam Bhakti to Nishkam Bhakti. So we'll go on. The conclusion of this chapter, the Dhruva story, is over. And there's a few verses where Narada Muni speaks to the Prachetas. Now, conclusion. In most adverse situations, these are adverse situations, Bhakta Gunai Parajitam, conquered the Lord by his devotional activities. That was, he took up the instructions of Narada. Very seriously. Dhruva Tapa Prabhava is the personification of austerities. Took up the instruction from Manu and Kuvera, even in the middle of going through the loss of his brother, and while at the peak of his warrior spirit. So Dhruva is exalted in many ways. Many ways. Some concluding thoughts. Benefits of hearing the Dhruva pastimes. Let's go to the benefits of hearing the Dhruva pastimes, starting with text 44. By the way, this is the last slide from the whole section. My dear Vidura, whatever you have asked from me about the great reputation and character of Dhruva Maharaj, I have explained to you in detail. Great saintly persons and devotees very much like to hear about Dhruva Maharaj. By hearing the narration of Dhruva Maharaj, one can fulfill desires for wealth, reputation, and increased duration of life. It is so auspicious that one can even go to the heavenly planet or attain Dhruva Loka, which is achieved by Dhruva Maharaj, just by hearing about him. The demigods also become pleased because this narration is so glorious and it is so powerful that it can counteract all the reactions of one's sinful actions. There's a lot of verses here. Anyone who hears the narration of Dhruva Maharaj and who repeatedly tries with faith and devotion to understand his pure character attains the pure devotional platform and executes pure devotional service. By such activities, one can diminish the threefold miserable conditions of material life. Anyone who hears this narration of Dhruva Maharaj acquires exalted qualities like him. For anyone who desires greatness, prowess, or influence, here is the process by which to acquire them. And for the thoughtful men who want adoration, here is the proper means. The great sage Maitreya recommended one should chant of the character and activities of Maharaj Dhruva, both in the morning and the evening, with great attention and care in a society of brahmanas and other twice-born persons. Persons who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord should recite this narration of Dhruva Maharaj without taking remuneration. Specifically, recitation is recommended on the full moon or dark moon day. When is the Purnima? Today. Look at that. On the day after Ekadasi, on the appearance of the Shravan star at the end of a particular tithi, or on the occasion of Vyatipata at the end of the month, or on Sunday. Such recitation should, of course, be performed before a favorable audience. When recitation is performed in this way, without professional motive, the reciter and audience become perfect. 2 more verses. The narration of Dhruva Maharaj is sublime knowledge for the attainment of immortality. Persons unaware of the absolute truth can be led to the path of truth. Those who, out of transcendental kindness, take on the responsibility of becoming master-protectors of the poor living entities automatically gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. And the last verse of the chapter. The transcendental activities of Dhruva Maharaj are well known all over the world, and they are very pure. In childhood, Dhruva Maharaj rejected all kinds of toys and playthings, left the protection of his mother, and seriously took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. My dear Vidura, I therefore conclude this narration, for I have described to you all its details. Whew. That's the end of the Dhruva Maharaj narration. And this is our final slide. Just a few points. It leads to the perfection of life, and we'll thank Srila Prabhupada for providing these nice Bhaktivedanta purports and the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam, the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Hare Krishna. It's a little over an hour, but the chapter is done. Let's see if there's some discussion. It's a lot. I mean, I feel badly in one sense that covering these topics that are so weighty so quickly may not be doing them justice. On the other hand, maybe by hearing all of this, it can encourage people to go back, go more slowly, verse by verse, section by section, get a little more absorbed. Yeah, there's something behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question is about one of the slide mentions about Dhruva Maharaj saying death personified before boarding this spiritual plane.
Death personified?
Yes.
So what's death personified? That's your question?
No, my question is like, is it signifying that Dhruva Maharaj gave up his material body before boarding the plane, or why?
No. It has different meanings, but that's not one of them. His body had already been spiritualized. That was chronologically what was said. So the body had been transformed and he was effulgent. Like spirit is effulgent, his body was spiritualized. Now, he was greeted by death personified, can mean different things. He was giving benedictions because with the spiritualized body, by placing his feet on the head of death, he was benedicting death personified. Because death personified probably doesn't have a lot of fans, a lot of followers and lovers of death personified. So he was giving benediction. He was also showing indifference, not fearful. Many people are fearful of death. He wasn't. It doesn't say specifically why death personified came before him, like to spook him, or because he's not going to die. He's in this spiritual body already. So he can't take away the spiritual body. The body is already spiritualized fully. So the purpose of death personified coming isn't clear to me, other than, getting the blessings of Dhruva, and Dhruva willingly giving his blessings and displaying yet another quality of an exalted person, that he's fearless of death.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Then bring the microphone up forward. Thanks.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. One slide showed that Ajita is the form of the Lord, which is on Dhruva's planet.
That's from Rupa Goswami, right?
Yeah, but I think we discussed that it was Prishni Garba. Right. So both forms are there, or are they both same, or?
Well, it could be that Prishni Garba has another name. Okay. Not two different forms, but a different name of the same form of Vishnu, same feature of Vishnu.
Okay. Thank you.
Like Krishna may have many different names. He's one Krishna, addressed by a feature of him. So this name, that name, the other name. That's one possibility. I just put it there because that's what Rupa Goswami says in Laghu Bhagavatamrita.
And just an observation, it's just coming to my mind. Death personified, it cannot be Yamraj because he is a Mahajan.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's someone else.
Yeah,
right?
death personified is not Yamaraj.
Yeah. I think we discussed this in Prithu Maharaj's pastime. I think there it is mentioned that death personified is Mitra. I think so. I'm not remembering it that very well.
I don't recall. I can research it.
Yeah. Something we did it before. I'm not remembering it very well.
personified. I think it's Prithu Maharaj's son. Vena's mother was death personified daughter.
Say it again. Say it again slowly. Slowly.
Prithu Maharaj's son, Venu's mother was death personifies his daughter.
The daughter of death personified.
Was Venu's mother. King Vena. Like, yes.
That is why King Vena got those qualities.
Very bad qualities.
You mentioned that.
Uh-huh.
That because of his mother's ancestry, King Vena was bad.
Bad.
And she was the daughter of death personified.
But the daughter of death personified doesn't indicate death personified. Death personified is not Yamaraj. That's one thing. And who is death personified? His name is not indicated other than death personified. Okay.
I have just a comment. I was very much moved by the character of Kubera, like how forgiving he was.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Of course, he's an exalted person. He wasn't in a get back. He could have. Most people would have been. You wantonly killed my followers. I'm a powerful person. You're going to catch it. I curse you. But he didn't do any of that. He understood Dhruva's exaltedness, because that's part of what he said, and he cleared his slate by saying, "You're sinless." That's without being asked for forgiveness, he's extending his forgiveness. He's powerful and magnanimous, recognizing what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Apichet sudharacharo bhajate mam ananya bhaksadureva. He's right on. As Krishna sees such a person as sadhu, he's seeing him as sadhu. It takes a lot. Yes, elevated, very remarkable. But that's his quality, Kuvera. Okay. Anything online? Okay. Here comes the microphone. He wants to give you the microphone. That's it. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.